Welcome back, everybody, and welcome if this is the first time you see the video. Well, I've been prepping for like 3 days. I still don't know how to even start this. I mean, where to even begin? Bloody hell. I think start from the beginning. Start from the beginning. When I started this channel specifically, I didn't think Formula One would be as key. It would play as key a role just because of how the other seasons have gone. You thought he'd mention it, kind of like how I mentioned some of the other sports on here. But after I guess testing, everyone realised, wait a minute, Red Bull are quite good. What's up with Mercedes? Do we have a championship on our hands? Then we moved to Bahrain, where Verstappen caned Hamilton in qualifying, and we're thinking, all right, this really is something. And then they had a great race, the chase down. Hamilton held off Verstappen. It did look like, all right, finally there's going to be a championship on. As we went through Imola, through all the craziness that's happened every single week, I've realised, okay, this is going to be something that's going to run and run. If you said to me at any point, I've got all the races there. If you said to me at any point this season, we're going to end up in Abu Dhabi level on points. Like if you said to me just after turn one in Silverstone in the main race, if you take yourself all the way back, Hamilton got on pole for the sprint race. Verstappen mugged him in the sprint race, obviously cleanly, there was nothing wrong with that. Won the sprint race, so Verstappen's on pole, got away in the first corner. We're thinking, they had a 33-point lead. The championship was basically over then. The championship was also basically over in Mexico, because you thought, well, it was certainly over when you left Mexico, and then we thought it was going to be over again when Hamilton got disqualified from qualifying on Friday in Brazil, starting at the back with Verstappen at the front. You're thinking it's absolutely game over. So from the end of the sprint race in Brazil to now, I have no idea. What's happened, and it's got worse in the sense of, we'll get into it in a minute, the FIA, mistakes that have been made, stewards, penalties, investigations, catfighting, and controversy. So before we start, smash subscribe, it helps. We're building towards 100. That's the next step. Look, let's get into it. This week, I'm gonna go. There's a lot of points. I've got my laptop here. There's a lot of points to get through, and I think it's good to just go through them in order. Throw some things out, and I'll give you my opinions on what I think happened, and based on what I've seen and what I've been watching for the last 3 days. So we started off. I mean, we went into this race obviously off the back of last week. So Hamilton obviously won in Qatar. Quite a straightforward race in terms of he wasn't really under pressure, mainly because Max got that penalty in the grid penalty at the beginning. All the politics. It was mainly more about politics last week, or 2 weeks ago even, in Qatar. It was more about the rear wing. Christian Horner was saying Mercedes are cheating. That's gone away, by the way. I don't know where that's gone. No one asked. I don't think I heard a single question being asked about Mercedes' straight line speed to either team. So that thing's gone away. So that tells you all you need to know about all that stuff, all the Karen Horner memes, all that kind of stuff. You know where that's gone, and nothing's really changed. And we know Mercedes had the big engine in this week. Nothing's really changed, but that was quite interesting. That's not even on my notes, but I just remembered that now. Like, they've not actually spoken about. I mean, Christian Horner said he was going to protest here in Jeddah or the last weekend if they saw the straight line speed, or if they saw the score marks or anything on that wing they didn't like. So that kind of went away. So that all kind of went into nothing. Max had 8-point lead going in. Mercedes' lead was down to 5 points in the constructors. So it's all to play for coming in here. Brand new track in Jeddah. Brand new track. They've literally built it. They built it in 8 months apparently. And they designed it to be the fastest street circuit in the world. So the track, as it's been made out, for those of you who don't know, has been made for this exact purpose. Everything that happened this weekend, it literally was a consequence of what they made. They made it to have this purpose. They didn't make it. What did you expect? You make a street circuit, the second longest circuit on the calendar. So think about this. In terms of all the short little circuits, you've got the Red Bull Ring, which is tiny. You've got Monza, which is relatively small. You've got Spa, which is an enormous track, a minute 44, something like that, is a lap around there. It's a huge track with loads of tracks, loads of corners, loads of straights. It's the second fastest. So not only is this the second longest track after Spa, which is enormous, it's the second fastest average speed, 158 miles an hour, average for a minute and a half. So with walls and blind corners, they made it, and everyone was thinking, okay, great. And there's an element of jeopardy about it, which is great. Everyone loves, a bit of danger. That's why it's Formula One. That's why it's exciting. But in my opinion, so chuck my opinion with just the layout before we even get into anything else, it's one of those where how far do we go? Like, just ask yourself, how far would you go to add some variability into a race or any kind of sport? To be fair, like, how far do we go? Do we want to have it? All right, let's do one race where you're on ice, one race where you have to go on wet tires, see who wins. One race where it's a circle. How fast? Like, how much do we need to push the boundary before it's like, okay, cool, right, maybe we should just get some racetracks with some turns, with some gravel, with some walls, and just see who can build the best race car to go around and which best race driver can take that car around the track. I think this one, I was thinking about it through FP1, FP2, and seeing the crashes in the F2 races just before the Formula One. Like, how far do we need to go to add some spice? Like, surely there's other ways we could add spice rather than making just a dangerous racetrack. To race on, it's just a silly racetrack. It's not utterly dangerous, it's not completely ridiculous. But I feel like this is one of those where it just steps too far. Monaco's fine because it's very slow, or relatively speaking, it's slow. Still dangerous, you can hit the wall, especially as Leclerc did. Baku is fine because all the corners are all right angles. Anything that's twisty in the city section, it's all right angles. So you go around the corner, it's very... It's not a lot of speedy stuff. The main straight is huge, but it's about 6. You can get about 6 or 7 cars wide there. The main straight down here, you're just about to get 2 or 3, and then you're not going to make that first corner because it's such a left, which is a problem, rather than just a straight left or a straight right. When you had multiple corners after a long speed section, it just makes it 10 times worse because you can't pick one line. So if you go around the outside, you're then going to get cut in on to go that way. If you're on the inside, it's a bit of a mad. Anyway, I'm rambling. We'll get into the week's action, the weekend's action. So FP, before we actually get into the qualifying, the practice session, Hamilton was in trouble throughout that session, and it was getting to a point where you're thinking, how many is he going to go with? I don't know, for the neutrals or the Hamilton fans or the Verstappen fans. The first one where he blocked Mazepin, he didn't block him. He by default of being in front of him blocked him. He didn't literally stop Mazepin from going, but he was in a bad position. He was kind of going slow, and Mazepin was going quick behind him. His team didn't tell him, because of the nature of the track, you can't actually see who's behind you, especially in that corner. Mazepin came up, avoiding an accident. Hamilton actually texted him after saying, thanks for not crashing into me. So Hamilton got a reprimand for that. And you only have 3 of those in a weekend, in a race weekend. If you get 3 reprimands, you get a 10-place grid drop for the next one. So you got reprimand for that. He also got the team got a fine because it wasn't his fault. It was the team's fault. He also slowed down, more of an issue. He slowed down and blocked Gasly on the straight, which was what it was. That was kind of a very strange one. And then this yellow flag thing, which didn't look like a yellow flag incident. So he was in trouble throughout, struggling throughout. Verstappen came on. Bear in mind, it's a brand new circuit. No one Formula 1 car's even been on it before. Verstappen came in, went straight on, speeding round, and he always does. He does always seem to be the quickest at the very beginning. Whether he's the quickest at the end, well, he has been for a lot of the seasons, but he comes in and he just goes straight on. Like, he's the one who's going to take the most risks, as we see later on. He's the one who takes the most risk, and he's always the quickest at the very beginning. So that was very impressive from him. Hamilton was building his way through. Mercedes looked quick. They led a couple of the sessions. Qualifying was kind of going along. We're thinking Red Bull definitely looked better on Saturday. So when it came to free practice 3, just before the qualifying session, Red Bull looked a lot better. They got into it. Hamilton was struggling. And then when we got to Q3, obviously, Hamilton did a good lap under pressure. That was probably one of his best laps. Technically maybe not, but in terms of the situation, when the championship's kind of on the line, because whoever got pole was looking like they were going to win the race, or barring all the red flags and stuff, you look like if you're on pole, it's going to be difficult to overtake. So in the circumstances, that was a very good lap for Hamilton. Bottas put in a great lap to get P2 at the time. Verstappen flying around the place, almost hit the. I don't know how he didn't hit the wall or he didn't lose time at that first corner. He literally skidded round. I thought he totaled it at the beginning. Got away with it. Purple, flying down the back straight. Now, obviously, for those of you, most of you do know, but some of you don't know. On the little steering wheel, he's got a time that his target time to go for, and it tells him if he's up or down. Like the Formula One on the broadcast and on the game, it tells you if you're up or down. So you know they're not just going around hoping. He knows if he's up. So he was up 3 or 4 tenths, I think they said, which meant he was way ahead on pole. He's comfortably on pole. So all he had to do was get into the last corner and get out of it. So he went in there, locked the front tyre. Now, it wasn't just like, oh, woe is Max. He made a mistake and then made another mistake by not getting out of it and living to fight another day, which is, I guess, standard for Max. But he flew in there, made a mistake, and then he didn't want to just go, right, let me lift a little bit and get around the corner. He was like, no, screw it, I'm going to go for it. Hits the wall, breaks the suspension, and Hamilton's on pole. So that was crazy. That's when we thought the craziness. I mean, the weekend was crazy enough at that point. But then all the Hamilton stuff, the new track is very fast. Verstappen puts it in the wall. Like, championship defining moment. We've seen it, Vettel in Singapore, when Verstappen and Raikkonen, they all did the melee down this main straight. Vettel going off. Like, there's some big championship defining moments. Hamilton going off in China, Hamilton car breaking down in Malaysia. There's a lot of big moments. That felt like a big moment, but we'll see what happens in the race, because at the end of the day, at that point, Max is still third. He'll probably overtake Bottas. They'll go to the last race as it, level on points as we thought it might be. So race day comes. Most of the concern was about Max's gearbox, because he'd smashed the wall sideways, and gearboxes aren't meant to hit the walls at all. But if you hit him sideways, you're gonna get some lateral force. You're gonna screw up the internal part. Everyone was kind of thinking it was going to be a Leclerc from Monaco again, and he's going to have to change the gearbox. So Red Bull said no, gearbox is fine, which was, I guess, that worry kind of subsided, because I think early on, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but I was thinking, is Max's car going to get to the grid? Is it going to be fine through turn 1, 2, 3? How far is it going to go? And I think that given what preceded it, we kind of forgot about that. But that was that's the initial part. We forget that there was an issue with his gearbox. Well, we thought there was going to be an issue with his gearbox, and there's a chance that he either wouldn't finish or he wouldn't even get to the grid. So that part's been lost in all the madness that followed. So the funniest thing about what happened, about how the race panned out, is I just had a feeling, especially after what happened in the F2. So if you don't, again, for those of you who don't know, just before the Formula 1, there's the category below Formula 2, and off the line, I believe it's Teo Porcher, it's a Formula 2 driver, stalled on the actual grid when they were going off, so he was stationary. Fittipaldi hit the back of him, 70 Gs, so more than what Verstappen hit the wall in Silverstone, hit the back of him, so I think Fittipaldi's got broken legs or something of that description. So that kind of put a bit of a cloud on things, that delayed that race and delayed the Formula 1. I just had a weird feeling about the whole, I was thinking this is going to be, I don't know what it was, I just had a weird feeling about how the race was going to go. The funniest thing is, off the line, obviously everyone was fine off the line, everybody got through the first couple of laps. Like given how crazy everything else was and how crazy the F2 was, that one of the most ironic things about this whole thing was, after all those nerves, turn 1 was fine, turn 2, turn 3, lap 1, 2, 3, 4, up to lap 10 was just, everyone was just rolling around as they are. Nothing was going wrong. Hamilton was building a lead, about 2.5 seconds. Bottas was comfortable in second. Verstappen was chilling in third, and Leclerc held off Perez. So it was just as you were. So for 10 laps, it was like, okay, cool, we're just going to get a race. Enter young Mick Schumacher. This is the start of, this is where it all kind of started to unravel, around lap 10. So Mick Schumacher hits the wall at this place where Leclerc hit the wall in practice. So it's a well-known place. If you get it wrong there, you're going to go off, you're going to hit the wall. And it's probably going to be, safety car for sure, because you're going to have to get the car out there. And then we'll see what happens with the barriers and red flags. So the first mistake that FIA made, so make a note of this, well, if you can. First mistake that was made was they put the safety car out and they let it go around for 3 laps. So that was the first problem. So they put the safety car out for 3 laps, which in theory is a good idea. But given that you had to red flag the session before for that same crash, it doesn't make sense that you'd go right safety car, even though the barriers are smashed. The Ferrari's the Haas rather was smashed up in the wall, in the barriers, which did absorb the car quite well. It seemed to me that a red flag was probably going to come if they knew exactly how the original incident went. Obviously, we don't know exactly in terms of the barrier damage and how much structural damage there is. So the FIA and the stewards would know if a car goes in there, oh, that was the same place as before, probably throw a red flag there earlier. Because the issue with putting a safety car out, if anyone sees a safety car and a car off in the wall, you kind of expect it to just be a safety car. Like, the red flag normally comes out very quickly. So everyone's going to pit straight away for new tyres, because it's the easiest way to do. You save yourself loads of time. Everyone's going to box. So, well, apparently everyone's going to box. So Mercedes boxed, most of the top 10 boxed. Verstappen stayed out. Now, this is the first kind of talking point, I guess just more hypothesizing, to be fair. Why did they stay out when everyone else boxed? I guess you're trying to roll the dice and get track position. But surely on a safety car restart with fresher tyres, you're gonna get screwed, because you're gonna go back when you have to take your pit stop, when your tyres go off. You're gonna have to go back like 6 or 7 places, because you're gonna lose 25 seconds in the pit. So it was a weird one. I get they rolled the dice, but it was a strange roll of the dice from Red Bull to not pit. This turned out to work in Verstappen's favour incredibly, because whilst everyone else pitted, Verstappen stayed out. Then they red flagged the session. So under red flags, as you know, or if you don't know, you can do whatever. Well, you can change the tyres in the car. You can actually change parts on the car as long as it's like for like, same weight, same specification. So you can do all the changes to the car. So it's an absolutely free pit stop. So when everyone gets going again, not only are you first, so this is Verstappen, you've got fresh tyres on. When Hamilton, Bottas, and Verstappen's teammate, Ferraris, everyone pitted for new tyres. So that I don't have I mean, everyone, funnily enough, because my first thought was Hamilton got away with that, not got away with it, but he benefited from that in Imola when he just went off the road. Like, it was a mistake, it was wet, but he went off the road, made a mistake, hit the wall, damaged his car. Then later on that very same lap, Bottas and Russell smashed into each other, red flag. So Hamilton benefited from that. Slightly different, because obviously it was a red flag immediately in that situation, as opposed to, it's a safety car, everyone come in the pit. Only joking, it's red flags. That was why this one was different. But Hamilton benefited from it. He was obviously on the radio, as you might have heard, moaning about that, as you would. If I was him, I probably wouldn't have moaned about it, knowing that I got away with the same thing in Imola and Silverstone. Silverstone different, because it was, Verstappen's in the wall, but it's a bit different. But this one, there are some similarities. But Lando Norris came out after the race and said it's the stupidest rule ever, which he got done dirty from it. So that's probably why he said that. A lot of people don't like the rule. So I was kind of holding judgment again, because I know Hamilton got away with it in Imola. I was like, well, I can't be like, oh, it's a terrible rule. It's the rule. Maybe work out how you're going to give out red flags or safety cars ahead of that, rather than complaining about the rule, complain about the application of the rule. So don't hit play ahead of the game. Like, I'd rather apply that rule differently. I'd rather just go right red flag straight away, or change something. I don't know. They've got they've got the whole off season. They've only got 3 months until Bahrain, start of new season with new cars. So stewards and FIA are going to be busy over the winter. So anyway, where were we? Safety car. So there was a bit of cheekiness with Bottas. So Hamilton was in the lead of the race as they were coming into the pit stops for this red flag period. Bottas slowed down because he was going to pit straight after Hamilton. So obviously you can only service one car at a time. So if Hamilton's in there, Bottas can't just be sat there behind him. He can, but he can't. So he slowed Verstappen down. Well, he slowed himself down, and by virtue, Verstappen has to stay behind him. So that was cheeky, but there's nothing wrong with that, because they're going into the pits. That wasn't really looked at. So they were kind of red flagging for a little bit, 15 minutes or so. Lewis was complaining. Crofty on F1 commentary said this is going to be controversial, mainly because Verstappen could change his tyres under this red flag. It's kind of a mistake from the FIA, so that's why it was controversial, I suppose. Max got a free pit stop. Standing restart 1. So this is the first bit of like on-track drama. Max, Lewis. So Max was obviously on pole. Lewis was second, which is on the inside. Hamilton got another amazing start. He's up past Verstappen for all intents and purposes. They both kind of collide. They go off track, and then Ocon ends up getting that was later on. They end up coming off track. Off they go. It was quite. I thought it was quite dangerous when I saw it the first time. Perez kind of got out of danger, and Leclerc was got out of danger, and then it was Perez hit Leclerc, spun round. Oh no, the other way around. Leclerc was on the inside. Perez kind of pinched him. They spin round. More carnage. Russell and Mazepin rear end each other. That whole kind of scene was crazy because when you see a car go underneath another car, again, thank God for the halo. So that was the second red flag. So now we've barely got racing again. We've lasted 2 corners. Red flag, debris everywhere. Verstappen was out in front because of how it went. We had Verstappen, Ocon, and Hamilton were all kind of there. Verstappen was ended up getting down the inside. Ocon and Hamilton, it's kind of like a pinch. So Hamilton's in the middle, Verstappen, Ocon, it kind of went like that. Hamilton damaged his front wing a little bit. They all go off. Ocon ends up leading the race. So Michael Massey gets on the radio. And this, again, more people are more vocal about Michael Massey, the race director, than I am. It's a strange one because I don't know who could do a better job. I mean, I'm sure they could. He's in a bit of trouble, I think, just the way he handled this particular race. But he gets on the radio, and this is another thing. I'll go a side tangent. You've got this year they've added that little team radio thing to the FIA, so now we can hear the complaining to the ref, so to speak. So every other year in the history of ever, you've barely been able to hear team radio. They've upped the team radio thing. That they're obviously broadcasting anything spicy. They'll broadcast it as they always have done. But now the FIA complaining, so the teams complaining to the FIA is being broadcast, which is only for the fans. It's not, people don't, I wouldn't mind seeing less of it, but it does add to the spectacle. It does make it more dramatic. So Michael Massey gets on the phone to Red Bull and says, we're going to offer you, which is just bizarre, because Verstappen was going to get a penalty for that move. We're going to offer you, initially he said P2, forgetting that Ocon was actually in the lead of the race. He's like, I'm going to put you behind. He said Ocon, but I think he meant what he meant in the end, but he got there in a roundabout way. He offered Red Bull the chance to be behind Hamilton. They're like, okay, cool, we'll put you behind Hamilton because that was a dodgy move. We're gonna put you there. We're gonna have Ocon on pole, Hamilton second, Verstappen third. Now that was kind of a weird one, but I mean I see the logic, but I just don't think you can't ask the team, oh, do you want to have P2? Even though he did say, well, do you want P2? If you don't take P2, we're going to give you the stewards, and the stewards are going to probably put you further back. So it's kind of, I see what he's trying to do, but it didn't work out that well. So in that particular red flag session, which was lap 17, they changed Verstappen's tyres. So he's finally he's doing another pit stop now to medium tyres. Now at the time, that is in keeping what they did in the beginning. So at the beginning, they decided to leave him out there, which is a roll of the dice because they wanted to get track position. Now they've done another roll of the dice to get medium tyres because Hamilton's roasted them twice on the starts now, and clearly he's got a faster car off the line. They need to get softer tyres, so obviously the medium, which is obviously softer than the hard that Hamilton had on. And the idea was get off the line quicker and hold track position and just see what happens later on. At that point, you had 33 laps, and I think Pirelli said the medium tyres could do 30 laps. I think it was 30. So it was going to be a risk. I would rather not have been on the medium tyres at that point. I'd have rather just gone on hards and just see what happened. But you know, that's what they decided to do. After all the suggestions, they changed tyres. Verstappen, this is Verstappen's best moment of the weekend, and I think this deserves, for all the negative stuff he is getting, deservedly so, he deserves so much credit for this move on Ocon and Hamilton. It's so Verstappen, it's unbelievable. So Ocon was on pole, which is, so bear in mind, obviously, as we know, left hand, sharp left hand is the first corner, and pole position's on the right. So you need to kind of get over there to the left. Ocon is always going to get roasted, poor Ocon. He was out in the front, Hamilton was second, Verstappen was on the right-hand side, which is the quicker side of the track. Everyone goes off, Hamilton is up alongside Ocon. So we're thinking, all right, cool, everyone's sweep in, Hamilton's going to lead. Verstappen goes from this side of the track to this side of the track. I mean, send it is the only word, the only logical Oxford Dictionary approved definition of what he did. He sent it down the inside. When you look at it on the onboard, I'm thinking there's no gap there. I mean, Hamilton wasn't looking. Hamilton probably wasn't thinking Verstappen's going to go down the inside here because it's so sharp. But Verstappen sent it. I mean, sent it with a capital S. Gets in there, makes the turn. Hamilton and Ocon have a bit of contact again. Off they go, and then this is the most extended period of racing in for a little while. So they go off. Verstappen's out in front. Hamilton's in second. Ocon was in second. Hamilton was going along. Hamilton overtakes Ocon very easily down the end of the next lap, and then off we go for a couple of laps. And we're thinking, okay, cool, we're going along, but Verstappen's tyres are going to fall off. Like at this point, as we're going on, we're lap 23 before the next thing happens. We've got 27 laps left. Verstappen's medium tyres aren't going to last. Hamilton's hard tyres are going to last. And Hamilton was looking quick. He was getting quite close. So this was like, all right, cool, on we go. Tsunoda hits the wall, loses his wing. And obviously, as you know, on street circuits, the reason why they're so difficult is because if you damage anything, a part falls off, we have to get marshals on the track to get rid of the parts. And to do that, you need to essentially stop the race or slow the race right down, which means safety cars are red flags. So they put out a virtual safety car, number one. Virtual safety car number one. To slow everyone down by 40%. You can't go, there's an earliest time of arrival. It comes up on your steering wheel. It's like you're not allowed to get to that post before that time. So it's very easy to keep track of. Nobody should gain or lose anything. So that was a very brief safety car. And then there's another brief safety car, the second one. Raikkonen and Vettel hit each other. There was a silly move from Raikkonen for that second one. A couple laps later, and that second virtual safety car they should have extended, because what they did, they got rid of it, but there's still loads of debris everywhere. Alonso was on the radio. I thought it was quite interesting of Alonso. Again, if we wind it back to, I assume you've seen the reaction video of Alonso when he was watching Verstappen's lap. When Verstappen hits the wall, it's like his teammate or his brother had hit the wall. He was like, well, race is tomorrow. Like, what do you mean the race is tomorrow? He's not your teammate. It's not you in the wall. It's not your... The World Championship isn't for you. That was quite a strange... Like, I was like, okay, Alonso really was invested in that. And he was on the radio, conspiracy theories, get your tinfoil hats on. Alonso was like, we need a safety car, we need a virtual safety car, the race is dangerous. So they got rid of all the debris there. Now all the debris's gone. That part should have been extended. So they should have actually made that longer, but they put another one out to clear that debris out. Hamilton was getting quite close to Verstappen at this point. Verstappen kind of holds the lead, gets another couple laps later on, and then there's another, and this was, I was like, at this point, fourth virtual safety car in like 6 laps. So get to the next virtual safety car period, and Hamilton's right up behind Verstappen. So after that, it kind of looked a bit like we're gonna get a moment out of the last corner. we end up getting, yeah, this is where it gets quite funny. Lap 37 is where it gets quite funny. So out of the final corner, Hamilton's noticeably close. He gets DRS, he overtakes Verstappen, and he's, again, we've been looking at it all year. If you're not like that far in front of Verstappen, the corner ain't yours yet. We're not done yet, because if you're close, wheel in front, he's always going to go into the corner. He isn't going to make the corner. He's going to go into the corner so you, or whoever it is, Hamilton, whoever it might be, can't turn in. It's exactly what happened. So we went all the way into it. It's Brazil version 2, except it's a different type of corner. But Verstappen did the same thing as he did in Brazil. Brazil, we didn't get penalised because they didn't have the onboard, and they couldn't go back and give him a penalty afterwards, which is relevant to this, what happens here. They couldn't go back and give that. But the driving standards were kind of set there, and everybody, Hamilton, the whole grid apart from Verstappen, was like, well, what's the rules now? Are we allowed to run each other wide? Verstappen did that, and they was told on the radio, you need to give the place back. Strategically. So this, I didn't realise that at the time, because you got, obviously the team radios don't normally come out at the time when you're seeing the action. So at that point, he was told, I can't actually remember, I need to watch it back again, but if I remember correctly, he was told, give the place back. Actually, to be honest, I think I might be wrong, but I remember watching it initially and seeing them both next to each other and thinking, maybe Verstappen's been told, but we hadn't heard it on the main feed, I don't think, at that point. And Mercedes hadn't been told, Verstappen's given the place back. So as Hamilton's coming up to the fast part of the track, the fastest part of the track, he sees Verstappen going slowly in a narrow, it is narrow, it's a narrow part of the track. But obviously there's a DRS zone, detection zone, at the back, at the end of the straight, for the hairpin, for the final straight. So they're both aware, if you're behind the car going into that little line, you're going to get DRS, which is you're going to go fly down the main straight. So Verstappen, after being told you need to give the place back, he's thinking, right, okay, I don't want him to have DRS. I don't want to let him by on the main straight. I'd rather slow down now, let him go past, get DRS, do him down the main straight. Didn't quite work out that way, because Hamilton wasn't told. This is the only time, and I promise you, this is the only time this has ever happened. Someone could probably find one, but I'm pretty sure it's never happened before where somebody goes, all right, let someone by, but they haven't told the other person. And for everyone saying, I say for everyone, for the people, not none of you guys probably, but Twitter is alive with, why didn't Hamilton just drive past him? It's like, well, if you come across Max Verstappen going slowly in a DRS zone, you're thinking, what's going, especially in a narrow part of the circuit. He's like, what is he doing? So Hamilton's like backing off. He's like, well, I haven't been told. Like, what is he doing? Verstappen's well aware that he has to let Hamilton by, but he wants to do it before the line. So Hamilton's like, well, I don't want to go past him. And at that point, there's a point where he could have gone past, and then there's a point where it gets narrow, and Verstappen makes a slight move, whether he did it on purpose or not, he's just moving his car around. He goes left a little bit. So Hamilton's thinking, I can't get past. Then Verstappen hits the brakes. And this is the whole point. Like, we'll get into the penalty afterwards, but he hits the brakes. Now, it's not dramatic, but it's 2 Gs apparently. And he significantly decelerated. Hamilton's like, hits the back of Verstappen. Now, I thought in the split second, that was like Monza all over again. I was like, Verstappen's done something stupid again, and Hamilton's out of the race. And at that point, in the first 3 seconds, before I saw Hamilton actually going, I'm thinking, that's his wheel off, that's his wing off, Hamilton's out of the race. The World Championship would have ended there. And, well, it depends on how the stewards would have seen it, but technically, if Hamilton was out of the race, Verstappen finishing where he finished, even if he got a 30-second penalty, ended up behind, he'd have won the World Championship last weekend because he brake tested Lewis Hamilton. So that part in itself would have been incredible. So at this point, you're thinking, to be honest, after the initial shock, I was like, okay, cool. Well, obviously, the stewards are going to throw the book at Verstappen here, because it's not going to be, oh, well, Hamilton should have... I think it was obvious that Verstappen had slowed down, and Hamilton... The key part of this whole thing was Hamilton wasn't told. So Verstappen hit the brakes. He didn't just move over and Hamilton hit him because he was confused. He was in the middle of the track, gave kind of enough space, and he broke. So that's key. The key is he broke. Hamilton wasn't told. If Hamilton was told, I don't know if there would have been a penalty. It's hard to know. If Hamilton was told, Verstappen's going to let you by, and then Hamilton tried to play that DRS game and then crashed, I don't think he'd have been told to give the place back. It's hard to know, but that's an interesting one. Put your comments in there if you think, if Hamilton was told and he still played the game and crashed. But I think the point is that the brake part is the whole key. Like I said, if Verstappen moved out the way, left the space, and Hamilton didn't go through it after being told, that's not his fault. But Verstappen kind of left it dubious enough when you're in the heat of battle without any radio call from your team. And hitting the brake, it's just too many things. So at that point, we're thinking, okay, there's going to be an issue after the race. He was told again, give the place back. So at this point, they're all gone. There's about a 2-second gap. I thought this could be a bigger gap after that damage, but about a 2-second gap after that happened. And then 3 laps later, he was told to give the place back again. So he did it in the same place exactly. Hamilton, again, if you watch it again, he as tentative getting past the second time. He was like, goes round him. And this is the interesting part, because this part won't get talked about a lot because it didn't really have relevance. It should have relevance, but it didn't. So let me set the scene. When you are told to give the place back, you have to give the place back, and then, have the other person has to have a lasting advantage in that. You can't, for example, head down the main straight. So let's say you're the guy who's been told to slow down. You slow down a bit, and you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. We've got history, and guess who was involved in it? A young Lewis Hamilton. 2008 in Spa. It's kind of a wet track in Spa towards the end. So Hamilton's second season, the year he won the World Championship. He's in a championship battle at that point. Spa's towards the end, so it's an important race. He goes past he goes past Kimi Räikkönen into the chicane at the end of the lap. Räikkönen, he didn't really make the corner, but Räikkönen kind of pushes him wide a little bit. It wasn't really dirty driving, but Hamilton goes off the track, cuts the chicane, and keeps the advantage. And I don't think we had team radio from the time, but he was obviously aware he has to give the place back. So he gives the place back, lets him go past. Then it's a long straight at that point. So he lets him go past. So he's in front. So Hamilton speeds up, makes a move down the inside, overtakes him. Now that in itself is exactly what Verstappen did. So if we go back to last weekend, so Verstappen let Hamilton go by. Hamilton carries on. Now that DRS issue that they were worried about has gone in Verstappen's favour. Verstappen flies down the inside and then off he goes. So he's let Hamilton by, but he hasn't given him a lasting advantage. So initially you're thinking, is that cheeky or is that illegal? Well, it's illegal, so you're not allowed to do it. So he was told to give the place back again. Flashing back to Spa, Hamilton won that race. Räikkönen span off and hit the wall because it was wet. Hamilton got a 25-second penalty in that race and ended up third. So he lost 25 seconds. Today's currency, that's just insane. But a 25-second penalty for doing what Verstappen did last weekend. So you're thinking, surely it's that's a part we could discuss. And it is relevant. To be honest, it is relevant. But if we want to talk about this whole season, we'll be here all night. But that's one of those. It's a controversial moment that you're not allowed to do. Basically, what Verstappen, simply put, you're not allowed to do what Verstappen did. Hamilton did it before, got heavily penalised for it, and off we go. So they do that again. So they go around, and then Hamilton was allowed to pass again. So he was told again, you have to overtake. So this time he goes past him, and I thought it was quite funny. But we'll talk about Michael Messi as well. Hamilton overtakes him in the same exact place. This is essentially take 3. So we're on take 3 now of the overtake. The overtake that should have happened in the first one that resulted in contact. The second one where Verstappen took him straight back. The third time, he let him by, right? Hamilton goes past. Verstappen is basically trying to get the corner. Hamilton leaves him no space. Hamilton was cheeky. Neutrals will say cheeky. Verstappen fans will say cheeky. It was funny because it's like finally Hamilton's getting. I think I texted my mate as well. I was like, finally Hamilton's getting his elbows out. So they got to the edge. Hamilton was like you can stay there, you can stay there. Now I'm gonna go. Off he goes, and from then on, it was smooth sailing. From then, Bottas overtook Ocon on the line as he did to Lance Stroll in Baku in 2017 or 18, which is obviously good for Mercedes in terms of the constructors because Perez being out, 28-point lead for Mercedes. Hamilton and Verstappen are tied on points, and Verstappen's in front because he won 9 races to 8. So after all that, so a quick one towards that little move I was talking about on Verstappen where he hung him out to dry. Michael Massey, strangely, this is one of the things I probably didn't agree with. He got on the phone to Mercedes' team and said what Hamilton did there was borderline black and white flag, which means you get black and white flag for dangerous driving. If you get 2 of them, I think you get disqualified. The same thing that Verstappen did when he was weaving in Brazil. I thought that was a bit I thought that was at the time, I thought that's Michael Massey under pressure, lashing out at Mercedes, or lashing out at Hamilton or Mercedes, whichever one, because they've now won the race, and they've kind of also, or they're leading the race now, and they've also kind of like stuck it to Max by leaving him out. Like Hamilton left him, he just left him out on the road, and then it wasn't dangerous, but he definitely was like, all right, cool, take that, off we go. I thought that was a bit of a strange one from Michael Massey, because that was a bit of a, you know, someone celebrating, you're like, oh wait, anyway, don't do that. It's like, all right, Michael. So anyway, big deep breath. That's everything that happened in the order it happened, I think. I mean, it's impossible to break it all down, but hopefully I've given all the possible permutations. So Max Verstappen ended up getting a 5-second penalty for that second move. So if we go all the way back, was it the second or the first contact? The second contact after the first restart, when Max and Lewis both went off track, and then obviously that's when Ocon got involved. But when Max sent Lewis off the track, that 5-second penalty was given later on because Max didn't give the place back at the time. So he gets a penalty for that. So he ended up putting him back a little bit further. I'll put up the final things. Max Verstappen, after the race, was giving a 10-second penalty for brake testing. So that the collision that caused all the issues, Max hitting the brakes and Lewis going into him, Max was given a 10-second penalty for that. Now, the issue with that is, if you look at all the 10-second penalties that have been given, certainly post-race penalties, because Hamilton was given 10 seconds in Silverstone, which has to be because of the consequence, even though they're not allowed to use the consequence in the penalty decision. They have to go, okay, what happened? That's a penalty for that. It doesn't matter if the guy's hit the wall or if he hasn't hit the wall. The point is, whatever the incident is, that's the penalty. That's the crime. So Verstappen got the same penalty as Hamilton got in Silverstone. Now, Verstappen was found guilty of doing one of the top few things you're really not allowed to do in Formula One, and it really looked very much frowned upon, is brake testing, because obviously the cars are so fast. If you slam the brakes on unnecessarily, you're going to cause damage, which is what he did. So the fact that the stewards decided to give him a 10-second penalty, knowing that there was a big enough gap so that he essentially wasn't penalised, it's kind of a weird one, because, okay, you could say that he was fast enough that if they'd given him a 20-second penalty, it wouldn't have mattered. But 30-second, you know, as the graphic shows, it's if they gave him a proper penalty, he'd have dropped back places and we wouldn't have a tie championship. So there is an element of that. I think it seems a bit inconsistent to me. To me, it's inconsistent because you give Verstappen a 10-second time penalty after the race. Now, Monza, they gave him a 3-place grid drop for crashing into Hamilton. This was worse than that. So if you want to kind of give them different hierarchy, he was given a 3-place grid drop for just driving into Hamilton and taking both of them out. He's giving a 10 after the race. The race has been done. So they decided, rather than giving him a time penalty, which they can't do, they gave him a grid drop for the next race. This time they've gone, no, we're going to give him a 10-second time penalty, which is, again, the second most lenient penalty. If the race had continued, if they'd given the penalty at the time, they would have given him a stop-go penalty, which is about 30 seconds. You have to go into the pit lane, stop for 10 seconds and go, which is about 35 seconds. So if the race was another 20 laps and they decided, all right, that's worth a penalty, they would have given Max Verstappen a stop-go, which would have put him, I think, P7 above Leclerc. So because that the timing thing I'm putting up is including this 10-second. So if you chuck another 20 seconds on there, it's not an even championship. So that I'm not really interested in conspiracies, because I think obviously there's corruption in every walk of life, but I think focusing on conspiracies, obviously, if you look at Twitter, if you're neutral, probably don't look at Twitter, or if you're intelligent enough, filter out the good with the bad. Take the most polarizing opinions and just find something in the middle, because there are some people out there who do have balanced opinions, but everyone else is, the FIA is corrupt, Lewis is lucky, Lewis is a cheat, Max is a cheat. It's kind of the truth is in there somewhere. And it's none of whichever one you look at. So, I mean, my opinion on everything that happened. I mean, I've seen a couple of podcasts and stuff, and the general consensus is after some of these events like Silverstone, Monza, like the general consensus among commentators, pundits, and Twitter, the F1 fans, it does tend to balance out. There tends to be a general narrative. The general narrative after this race is that Max way overstepped the line. It wasn't just a case of, oh, it's fine. Max's general approach has kind of crossed the line this time. I think that's the general consensus. And that's what I kind of think. Because, listen, in terms of wheel to wheel, there's some tough drivers. Lewis Hamilton isn't one of those. He just simply isn't, as we've seen all season long. Starting with Imola, he was forced off the track in Imola, and then Spain and Monza, and it all kind of, the dirtiest thing in brackets that Hamilton's done was Silverstone, and he was up the inside. It was a bit of they're going that way, so that's as bad as it gets for Hamilton. But Verstappen, it seems to be the do or die approach, which has been his whole career from the minute he entered F1. People have been complaining, but it works. It's fun. It's edgy. It's cool. It's fun. It is a double-edged sword. You have to take the rough with the smooth. Like the outstanding move on Ocon and Hamilton, and the general pace of his car and him over the course of since he was like 17 has to be applauded. But you have to also be like, all right, cool. When it goes wrong, it's very bad. When more balanced drivers, like most of the other drivers on the grid, bar a couple, when it goes wrong, it's a bit, all right, cool. That was a bit cheeky from Hamilton. That was a bit this. But the problem that Max has now is that he's definitely got the reputation solidified, especially after this weekend, that he just kind of doesn't really. I do get this vibe from Max actually that he doesn't seem to. He lives in his own sort of world a little bit. He has his own kind of. He doesn't, which is a good thing as well. It's definitely a good thing because I see him in interviews. He doesn't get flustered. He'll respond to things and he'll give his opinion. And I guess with the right prodding or the wrong prodding from the media, he'll kind of go off on one. But I do think that Max is very, very good at handling emotions, which makes the decisions he ends up making a bit more calculated than we can give. We can't give him the benefit of the doubt as much as people would like, because I think Brazil, he just hung Hamilton out. This time he did even the good move. He sent it. There was no gap there, but he sent it and got away with it because Hamilton was kind of dealing with Ocon. So the penalties were correct. The first one, Verstappen run Hamilton off the road and stayed in front. That's a penalty, that's fine. He didn't give the place back the second time. Didn't give the place back the first time or the second time. That was what it was. I think after the race, you have to. You do have to give. I mean, in my opinion, that was a stronger penalty. I thought the Brazil one was a penalty. I think the stewards would have given Max a penalty at the time, which would have put him behind Bottas. So the penalty that they didn't give in Brazil would have put Max behind. So they messed up there by not giving that penalty and not giving Max, essentially losing, I think it was 3 points to Bottas. They essentially tried to rectify that mistake by giving Verstappen a penalty, but they knew giving him a 10-second penalty and not a proper one, that Bottas was still another 6 seconds down the line. So it wasn't going to change any position. So both times they've tried to stay out of it. So this is the general approach from the FIA. They're going, right, okay, we want to stay out of it. We don't want to give a penalty that gives points. So I think that's the issue. And hopefully somebody comes out and kind of clarifies, because we can't go into Abu Dhabi with a cloud of, we don't know what's going to happen. It just can't really work like that. We can't go into it thinking, if there's collision, FIA might just go, I don't know, it's not on us. Up to 50 minutes. If you got this far, again, I keep saying it every week because I know there's a couple of you that do get to the end, but my closing thoughts, because I'm going to do a part 2, because again, first of all, I need a break. Secondly, Abu Dhabi is a separate topic. The final rate, I mean, like I said at the beginning, 11 on points, the tightest battle since 2016, when it's Rosberg and Hamilton. Rosberg had a big lead. Hamilton needed a lot of help to win that if he was going to win that championship that year. 2014, Rosberg and Hamilton both had a chance. Hamilton again was well in front, even though it was double points. So we're going back to 2012. when there's 4 of them going for the title. So we've not had a title race like this for 10 years. So don't get too swept up in the... It is the first time since 74 and the only other time. So there's only been 2 times in the history of Formula 1 where the World Champions have been tied going to the last race. So that is something. But there's been multiple teams going for a World Championship on the last day. It's entirely possible. My closing remark is going to be this. It's entirely possible we're going to get more controversy in the shape of Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher, or Schumacher Villeneuve. So there is precedent for if Verstappen or anyone, but mainly Verstappen or Perez, take Hamilton out of this race, there's a precedent for disqualifying Verstappen from the whole championship. So that's a thing. Because if they both don't finish, Verstappen wins. There's almost no scenario. I think there is literally no scenario, unless there is no scenario whatsoever that they can tie this championship. So if they don't finish, or if they both come 12th and 15th, Verstappen wins the World Championship. So if there's any damage or collision, I think you'd have to disqualify, because Verstappen's the only one that can benefit from contact. You would have to disqualify him. So if this does happen, it's happened before in 1997 and 1994. Schumacher got away with it the first time, but the second time he tried it again, got disqualified. Now, if there's any collision that results in the other person winning the World Championship, it'll be disqualification for sure. You could argue, again, closing remark, that Verstappen could, based on what he did, it's not out of the realms of possibility that Verstappen should have been disqualified from this weekend. If not for a cumulative effect of all the things he did, for brake testing a Formula 1 driver is kind of disqualification kind of grounds, but I wouldn't say I was asking for that. I think the 30-second would have been. I think a stop-go or a grid drop would have been more appropriate in this situation. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure everyone has different ones. So that is the Saudi roundup. It's a podcast, so treat it as a podcast. It's not a roundup. And hopefully all the graphics I put up, I'm going to put them up retrospective. I'm going to look back and work out where I'm going to put them. Hopefully they've helped, and hopefully I've made some sense. And if I haven't made sense, put it in the comments. I can take it. I'm a man, because I've spent a lot of time prepping for this. It's just a crazy. I mean, the reason why it's 50 minutes, and it's all of these different events that happened. Silverstone was just one crash, and the rest of it was just whatever. Monza was just one crash. Like, this is from start to finish, the whole weekend, the craziest weekend in terms of just madness. It has crossed the line. The bottom line is crossed the line. Just the FIA, the teams complaining, Verstappen's driving, track layouts. But yeah, I don't know if we all got what we wanted, but the media got what they wanted. Tie championship, Verstappen v Hamilton, winner take all. I'll see you in part 2. We're going to do an Abu Dhabi recap, Abu Dhabi preview, and of course, this time next week, probably Tuesday. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know if I hope it's a dramatic race or not. But hopefully hopefully they both finish. That's the one thing I do want. I want them both to finish, and then my personal preference is Hamilton, of course. But hopefully they both finish and no one takes each other out. See you in a bit.